What if the thing slowly ruining your life is something you do every single day without even noticing? Not a big mistake, not a major failure, just a small habit. Quiet, normal, almost invisible. And that's exactly why it's dangerous, because you don't fight it, you don't question it, you just live with it. And over time, it starts shaping everything: your focus, your energy, your confidence, your direction. Until one day, you wake up and feel stuck. Not because life is hard, but because something inside you feels off. You can't explain it. You just feel drained, unmotivated, restless, like you're capable of more, but somehow not reaching it. And the worst part? You don't know why. Now think about this for a second. Have you ever ended your day feeling busy, but not productive? Like you did a lot, but nothing that actually mattered? That's not random. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern, and patterns come from habits. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. The habit that's quietly destroying your life doesn't feel harmful. In fact, it feels good, easy, comfortable. That's why you keep doing it. Now here's the question. Why do we keep doing things that we know aren't good for us? Don't answer too quickly. Just sit with it. Because this is where things start to shift. Your brain isn't designed for long-term success. It's designed for short-term comfort, relief, pleasure, ease. So every time you feel bored, stressed, uncertain, your brain looks for an escape. Something quick. Something easy. Something that makes you feel better. Right now. And most of the time, you give it exactly what it wants, without thinking, without questioning, without realizing the cost. Now here's the part nobody tells you. That small escape you rely on. It's not neutral. It's training your brain. Every time you choose comfort over effort, you reinforce a pattern. Avoid discomfort. Seek easy rewards. Repeat. And over time, that pattern becomes your default, not consciously, automatically. Now let me say something most people won't admit. I avoid things that feel hard, even when I know they matter. If that hits, you're not alone. Because this isn't about willpower, it's about conditioning. You've trained your brain to choose the easy path again and again. So when something important requires effort, focus, discipline, your brain resists it, not because you're weak, but because it's unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels uncomfortable. Now here's where it gets real. Because this habit, it doesn't just affect your actions, it affects how you see yourself. You start noticing a pattern, starting things, not finishing them. Planning, but not executing. Trying, but stopping. And slowly, a belief forms. I'm not consistent. I don't have discipline. I can't stick to anything. And once you believe that, everything changes. Because now, you're not just dealing with a habit, you're dealing with your identity. Now here's a question. Be honest. Does this feel familiar? Because if it does, good. Not because it's easy to hear, but because you're finally seeing it. And awareness is the beginning of change. But wait till you hear this, because the real danger of this habit isn't what it makes you do. It's what it stops you from becoming. And once you understand that, you won't ignore it anymore. The real damage isn't loud. It's quiet. It doesn't break your life overnight. It slowly reshapes it, day by day, choice by choice, until one day, you look around and realize you're not where you thought you'd be. And it doesn't make sense, because you've been trying, you've been thinking, you've been planning. So why aren't you moving forward? This next part changes everything. Because the habit destroying your life isn't just about what you do. It's about what you avoid. Let that land. Because every time you choose comfort, you're avoiding something. Discomfort, effort, uncertainty, growth. And avoidance has a cost. A hidden one, Because what you avoid doesn't disappear. It accumulates. Tasks pile up, opportunities pass, decisions get delayed. And slowly, your life becomes heavier, not because it's too much, but because you keep postponing what matters. Now here's a question most people don't ask. Why does discomfort feel so unbearable? Why do we run from it so quickly? Think about it. Because the answer isn't weakness, it's interpretation. You've learned to associate discomfort with something negative, pain, stress, failure. So your brain tries to protect you. It says, avoid this. Do something easier. Do something that feels better. And you listen, not because you want to fail, but because you want relief. Now here's the twist. Discomfort isn't the problem. Avoiding it is. Because discomfort is where growth lives. It's where focus is built, where discipline is created, where change actually happens. So every time you avoid discomfort, you avoid growth. And every time you choose comfort, you stay the same. Now let me say something that might hit a little deeper. I keep choosing what feels good now, over what I'll need later. If that feels familiar, you're not alone. Most people are stuck in this loop. Short-term pleasure, long-term frustration. Repeat. And the longer it continues, the harder it becomes to break. Because your brain gets used to it, it expects easy rewards, instant satisfaction. So when something requires patience, effort, delayed gratification, it feels wrong, even when it's right. Now here's where the shift begins. You stop trying to eliminate discomfort, and you start learning how to sit with it, just for a moment, just long enough, to make a different choice. Now imagine this. You feel the urge to escape, to scroll, to delay, to avoid. But instead of acting immediately, you pause. You notice the feeling. You don't fight it. You don't suppress it. You just observe it. And in that small pause, something powerful happens. You create space, space between the feeling and your action. And in that space, you get control. Because here's the truth. You're not your urges. You're the one who chooses whether to follow them. But most of your life, you've been reacting automatically. Feeling to action. No pause, no awareness, no control. Now you're changing that. Now it becomes feeling to pause, to choice to action. And that pause, even if it's just a few seconds, changes everything. Now here's something most people won't admit. I don't even realize when I'm escaping. It just happens. Automatically. And that's the real danger. Because you can't change what you don't notice. So the first step isn't control. It's awareness, noticing the pattern, catching yourself in the moment, seeing the habit as it happens. Now let me ask you something. What's your go-to escape? Think about it. Because everyone has one. Scrolling, videos, snacking, overthinking, anything that pulls you away from what matters. Be honest. Because this is where your power is. Not in avoiding the truth, but in seeing it clearly. But here's where it gets even deeper. Because even if you become aware, even if you start pausing, there's still something underneath all of this, something driving the habit itself. And if you don't understand it, you'll keep coming back to the same pattern, no matter how hard you try. It's not just the habit, it's what the habit is protecting you from. That's the part almost nobody looks at, because it's easier to say, I need more discipline, than to ask, what am I avoiding? But this is where it gets real. Your habit isn't random. It's a response, a coping mechanism, a way to escape something deeper, stress, pressure, fear, self-doubt, uncertainty. And once you see that, everything starts to make sense, because you're not just choosing comfort. You're avoiding discomfort that feels personal. Now think about this. Why do you avoid certain tasks more than others? It's not always because they're hard. It's because they mean something. They're tied to your identity, your fear of failure, your fear of not being good enough, your fear of trying and still falling short. So instead of facing that feeling, you escape it. quickly, automatically, without even realizing it. Now here's a question. Why does your brain protect you from something that could help you grow? Sit with that. Because this is where things shift. Your brain doesn't care about your long-term success. It cares about your immediate safety. And to your brain, emotional discomfort feels like danger, rejection, failure, embarrassment. So it says, avoid this. Do something easier. Stay where it's safe. And you listen, not because you're weak, but because you're human. Now here's the problem. What feels safe in the moment becomes limiting over time, because growth always requires stepping into discomfort. So if you keep avoiding that feeling, you stay in the same place, repeating the same patterns, living the same version of your life. Now let me say something most people won't admit. I'm afraid to fully try, because I might fail. If that hits, you're not alone. That fear is more common than you think. Because trying means risk. It means effort. It means putting yourself out there. And if it doesn't work, you have to face that. So instead, you stay in a loop of partial effort, half starts, half commitments, enough to feel like you're trying, but not enough to truly change. And that's exhausting. Because deep down, you know you're holding back. Now here's where things start to change. You stop asking, how do I stay consistent? And you start asking, what am I afraid of? Because behind every habit of avoidance, there's a feeling you don't want to face. And once you face it, the habit loses its power. Now imagine this. You sit down to do something important, and that familiar resistance shows up. The urge to delay, to escape, to do something easier. But instead of reacting, you pause, and you ask yourself, what am I avoiding right now? Maybe it's fear of failing. Maybe it's uncertainty. Maybe it's pressure to do it perfectly. Whatever it is, you name it, and something shifts. Because what you can name, you can face. And what you can face, you can move through. Now here's the powerful part. The moment you stop running from discomfort, you stop needing the habit, because the habit only exists to protect you. Remove the need for protection, and the habit fades. Now let me ask you something. If you stopped avoiding discomfort today, what would you finally start doing? Think about it, not what sounds impressive. What feels real? Because that answer is pointing directly to your next step. But wait till you hear this. Because even when you understand your fear, even when you stop avoiding it, there's still one final shift. That turns all of this into real, lasting change. There's one final shift, and it's the one that makes everything stick. Not temporarily, not for a few days, but long enough to actually change your life. You stop trying to fix the habit, and you start replacing it. Because here's the truth. You can't just remove a habit. Your brain won't allow it. It needs something in its place, something that gives you a similar reward, but leads you somewhere better. Now think about this. When you feel stressed, you escape. When you feel bored, you distract yourself. When you feel uncomfortable, you avoid. Those are patterns, automatic responses. So if you try to just stop them, your brain pushes back. Hard, because it still wants relief. So instead, you give it a new path, same trigger, different response. That's how real change happens. Now here's what that looks like. You feel the urge to escape. Instead of grabbing your phone, you pause. You take a breath. You sit with the discomfort for just a few seconds longer than usual. That's it. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to interrupt the pattern. Now here's the part nobody tells you. At first, it won't feel good. It will feel slow, awkward, even frustrating, because you're breaking something familiar. But that discomfort, that's growth happening in real time. Now let me say something most people won't admit. I want change, but I don't want to feel uncomfortable. And that's the trap. Because the feeling you're avoiding is the exact feeling that creates change. So instead of running from it, you learn to handle it, bit by bit, moment by moment. Now here's the shift that changes everything. You stop asking, how do I stay motivated? And you start asking, how do I respond when I'm not? Because that's where your life is decided. Not in the moments you feel good, but in the moments you don't. Now imagine this. You have a bad day. Low energy, no motivation. Everything feels off. The old version of you would escape, delay, do nothing, and start over tomorrow. But the new version of you does something different, small, simple, but intentional. You don't quit the day. You reduce the standard, but you don't remove it. You still show up, even if it's 10%, even if it's messy, even if it's not perfect, because showing up, even in a small way, breaks the pattern, and breaking the pattern is what builds a new life. Now here's a question that might hit deeper than expected. If you kept repeating your current habits, where would you be in a year? Same routines, same distractions, same frustration. Does that feel okay? Or does something inside you say, that's not who I want to be? Because that voice, that quiet discomfort, that's awareness. That's the part of you ready to change. Now here's the truth. You don't need a completely new life. You need new patterns. That's it. Because your life is just your habits repeated. So if you change the habit, you change the outcome. Simple, but powerful. And one day, you'll notice something different. You don't escape as quickly. You don't avoid as often. You don't feel as stuck. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're responding differently. And that's control. Not over everything, but over yourself. And that's enough. Now let's bring this back to you. Right now, not tomorrow, not next week. Today. Because change doesn't happen in big moments. It happens in small ones. The next time you feel the urge to escape, pause. The next time you feel discomfort, stay. The next time you want to quit, do something small instead. That's it. That's how it starts. And over time, that small shift becomes a new identity. You're not the person who avoids anymore. You're the person who faces things, and that changes everything. If this hits something real in you, don't just move on. Stay with it. And if you want more like this, subscribe and start becoming the version of you that doesn't run anymore.